Okay. How you doing? What you learning? Who wants to start first?
So I think the reading that you provided for us was amazing.
Good.
Um, it
So
was
you're enjoying Therapeutic Expedition?
no, I haven't read that yet.
Oh, you
I'm
haven't
trying.
read that. So
No,
what are you talking
no.
about the journal article?
The article was amazing. I have a routine because I have two different classes that I'm doing, so I
Yeah,
usually focus on the journal for Thursday, and then tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I do my reading and stuff. So
that's okay. You've got a
yeah,
plan. That's good. Well, I'm
but
glad you
that
enjoyed
that
it.
that article on um, addiction was just amazing.
Good. The only thing
Yeah.
I don't like about the article, I love Ed Welch, by the way. And you will all have your preferences, is I don't use idle language. And Dr. P is partly responsible for that on my hermeneutic journey. And I just don't really think that it is good language to use with someone to help them really understand what the struggle is. I would
What
rather, yeah,
what was it?
idle.
Oh,
He
idol.
speaks a
Oh,
lot
the
about
idol.
idolatry in that
Okay.
article. But I put it all out there because I want you guys to come to a place of who you want to read. And I just share with you my take because I'm not going to not read somebody because they use idle language. I'm going to read them for, what they have, and I'm going to separate the wheat from the chaff, and that's how we are to read. And so, but I just think that idle language is really for what those things were then and not what they are now. And an excessive um, attachment. I like to use an excessive attachment to something because alcohol on the main, right? Not everybody is uh, an addict who drinks alcohol, and or someone would say, this is Dr. P's illustration. Is someone would say, "Well, golf is your idol." Well, when is how much golf is make it idol worthy? Is it one time a week? Is it two times a week? Is it so then it puts us in that place of judge, right? Of how attached we are to something. And some of these things for many people are not a problem. They don't create an addiction. So I like to use excessive attachment, or I also like to put it in terms of desires or affections, that their affection is for this versus that. And, but it's really interesting. I'm giving an emotions workshop at the IBCD conference, and I was reading Jonathan Edwards, who I absolutely love in the Puritan years. And do you know that the word emotion is not that old of a word? It's a relatively modern term. And that in the 1800s, the word that they used was affection
Hmm.
or emotion and desire and passions, not emotions. Emotions didn't come on the scene. It's really a pop psychology word that originated much later that was never used. And then I started looking through the Bible translations to see now in the message paraphrase and I think in one verse in the New Living Translation, they translate it to be emotion. But if you read that emotion as affection or desire, this verse makes much more sense. So just something, yeah, interesting in that we want to be as close to the original language as we can and the authorial intent of the book. We want to be strong in our hermeneutic and our biblical interpretation. And you can use idle. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm just saying to just think about that in terms of the context of like a passage that you would use about idols, you would find hard pressed to have that relate to somebody's life, right? So anyway, good. But
Dr.
Nick, thank you. I'm glad
Dr.
you
Welch.
joined the article because I like Ed Welch, and he's a wonderful voice in the biblical counseling movement. And I actually just met him for the first time at the Biblical Counseling Coalition conference um, last fall, and he was sitting right next to me, and he sat down, and I noticed, and then I was like, "What do I do now? Is that Ed Welch or not?" And so I just looked at him and I said, "You are Ed Welch, right?" And he said, he was so kind and so humble. He said, "Yes, I am." And I just said, "I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your work." And we had a great conversation at breakfast. But um, anyway, so who else? Who else has something to share about something you're excited about or learning or has become very real in your life? Maybe you had a conversation with somebody uh, about something that you had
Um,
just read about. Yeah. Julie, welcome back, Julie.
oh, hi, thank you. I actually was just listening to you talk about how instead of idols use excessive attachment. And what were the other terms that you use?
Desires, misplaced desires or affections, misplaced affections.
Based
Because
affection.
in that excessive attachment, you do create a love and a desire for it, right? I think the desire is the thing we're talking about. We're desiring the wrong things for what ails us. And so I just think that's more helpful to people in their transformation versus uh, how do I replace this idol? And then,
Yeah.
and then for people who like to enjoy a glass of wine or something, I mean, alcohol is not a problem for them. And so remember, we go by that everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial.
Yes. This is very helpful because in our
Good.
counseling journal, I did use the word idol a lot because I read Welch's
Because you read his, and
article.
that's okay. That's okay. I just brought, yeah, and that's all right. I mean, I know what people mean. I
But I
know
like
what,
I like excessive attachment and misplaced affection so much more. And when I was being counseled myself, my counselor used the word idol, and I never really could wrap my mind around it. But I
you
use it
couldn't
because I
really
know what it
connect to it.
means. I wasn't
And
connecting to
unless
it.
you've really studied the Bible, you don't know what the context is of which we're talking about idols. And most of the time, we are talking about statues. Let's remember that. We're talking about false gods. Um, those are the things that, for the most part, except in one part where Paul brings up greed. I think that's the one exception in the New Testament in the context of that passage. I can't remember. But thanks, Julie. Yeah, and so
Thank
you
you.
will not get marked off on your journal for using idle because when I was reviewing it and I was reviewing Ed's article, I was like, oh my, this whole basis of this article. But I still think it's worth reading and that Ed Welch has a good voice in the movement and he has worked quite intentionally with addiction too in terms of counseling issues. Yeah, Nick.
So is the reason why you don't like the word idol is because maybe it's a kind of a harsher word, like
No,
it'll come across.
I don't think it's harsh. I think it doesn't apply in terms
Oh,
of if we want to take a statue uh and fire and whatever item it was that they were worshiping. What was it for the Israelites? It was the golden calf.
yeah,
I mean, that was a real golden calf
yeah.
that they were worshiping. And I've seen people go to that passage to bring it into our day and time to compare that to someone's being an idol in their life. And that was for the Israelites. That was they really were truly worshiping a
Yeah.
gold calf.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
to extract that out and go, oh, well, that's an idol in your life. You might as well be worshiping.
There's a better word and better scripture when we want to talk about
Exactly.
orientation.
Yes. There's
Better
always
word.
a better word. And I think like Julie said, it kind of distanced them from an understanding of what's really going on. So it's not about harshness at all. It's about what did that word really mean for the author who was writing to that audience then.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's one of those words I don't think is helpful to translate it into our now because of the very real thing that we read about it. And it's mostly Old Testament language. And what we read about the Israelites' journey with idols and pagan gods, right? Throughout their journey that was specific to God and Israel. And and it doesn't mean that, we aren't worshiping something else, but let's talk about some of these things, particularly that people, let's say somebody's addicted to food. Let's say food is an issue, right? And you say that you've made food an idol, but for a large part of the population, food is a good thing. So if a person ever wants to return to a good thing, and then it makes you judge of when does that thing become an idol, right? So I just think we're more direct in dealing with what the actual issue is and the language for that, and not having to feel we have to extract something out of the Bible to give it a concept. It
Yeah.
has a unique life all on its own.
I
And
I, I kind of took the idea of an idol as like if it's metaphorically, it's something that's made by man. So
yeah,
we're putting our attention to something that's made by man versus God, and it's kind of taking our affection away from God for that man-made thing. So I kind
yeah.
of saw it, but I see what you're saying, like from a counseling perspective, if I'm sitting with somebody, that's probably not the right word. Uh,
Well, and you just said a disordered affection is another way to look at it. It's a disordered affection
yeah,
because where should our affections be versus where they are? But the thing is, in the Bible, it's not a metaphor.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a it's a real thing. And so we're taking a real thing and we're trying to make a metaphor out of it.
Mm,
But it was a real thing in the way that it was written about and it was and the authors presented it because that's what Israel was doing a large part of the time.
yeah,
Is right. They were worshiping false gods and gods from other nations. And the Lord wanted them to be set apart and distinct, which is another whole piece of that whole history and context. So, but you won't get marked off with that. That's a personal preference of mine. So don't. I remember when uh, I was sitting in the classroom as a student, like you guys, and Dr. P got up and said that, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" But then the more I studied the Bible and the more I learned, I was like, "That makes sense. That makes perfect sense." So it's just helpful, and I do think that it's hard for people to connect with what you're saying in that landscape. Because believe it or not a lot of people have read their Bibles, particularly the Old Testament, to really have a feel for what you're talking about when you say that. It's kind of like a Christianese thing. So
think
anyway,
I
good.
think I think from what I'm getting from what you're saying, and this is something that I know I struggle with because my message delivery sometimes is very harsh, and I don't think about what I'm saying and how the other person might receive it, right? And so sometimes I've been told that I lacked tact, right? So it's something that I'm constantly working on is like being more gentle with the delivery of the message that I'm giving.
That's
And I can,
good. That's
yeah,
I'm glad that you're aware of that and that you're humble and receive that. Because we want to be sitting there with wisdom and discernment, and the best way is to be able to communicate well with the person who's sitting across from us, whoever that might be. Mark, are you working today, Mark? Mark, Mark.
I just threw up. I'm driving home right now.
Oh, okay. I just want you guys to be on camera for this class. I know that you have to drive around in the cart sometimes, but when you can, oh, to keep your camera
I can
on.
leave my camera on now. That's fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. And Selena, for you too, if you can turn your camera on, that would be great. And because we really want to be engaging as a cohort. One of the challenges of practicum is when, because I have had one time an all classroom practicum where everyone's live and engaging. It's much easier to engage in conversation when you're a group, and you're live. So at least this way we all see our squares and we can have a good conversation with one another. Anybody else want to add anything? Any comments? Any experiences?
I I have a testimony. I'll keep it real short. A testimony slash prayer request for everybody. A couple months ago, my sister had called me and she told me she had filed for divorce from her husband of 25 years, and he suffered from depression. He lost his mom last year, and it's been getting pretty bad. So I got to listen to like what she was saying and kind of take it in and whatnot. And long story short, that book by Townsend, Boundaries. There's one that's for boundaries for marriage, and so I talked to her and I just kind of took it in, and I had suggested that book because she was talking about having issues dealing with him in the house and all that kind of stuff. And I gave her so I mailed her the book.
Good
And
for
I
you.
spoke to her on Sunday, and I said, "Hey, like, how's everything going?" She's like, "Nick, I want to talk to you about that book that you sent me." And needless to say, she loved it. She said that it was not only good to see how she wasn't setting boundaries and um how she can set boundaries, but also she said specifically that she kind of saw herself and her part in some of the problems. So
Ooh, that's
we're
that's what the
still
book is really
praying.
good for. Yeah.
We're still praying for her family because we've been praying since she told me. But I'd asked the class to do it, but she did tell her husband that she was willing to pull the divorce off the table if they were willing to do some work. And so
Wow.
if you guys would all just add Ben and Crystal Saywert to your guys' prayers and
Will
pray
you put
for
it on the board too,
I,
Nick?
w- I
Put
oh
it on the board so I remember and so the class can remember as well.
on
Um,
the bulletin board.
yeah, the bulletin board. And if you don't mind,
Okay,
just their names so that we know that we can continue to pray for them, that would be great.
will do. Thank you guys.
You are welcome. So is anybody concerned with who they're going to be seeing in the next 7 weeks? Is anybody struggling with someone? Jaden? Okay. Anyone else? Julie? Okay. Nick? Okay. All righty. So I am yeah, Matt, you too?
Well, I've got something lined up. I have questions about it, but we might get into this future. I just have questions about like if a person all of a sudden is unable to continue to meet, or if they're like if we decide that through like one of the things we've learned about already is when to terminate a counseling relationship. So if we choose somebody, we realize the issues are over our head, or like for me, I just have multiple questions about the practicality or like the logistics of meeting with the person.
Yeah, and yeah, you can do these over Zoom or in person. Um, and the thing is, remember, this is a first time out where we're just asking you to counsel one person. Because what we used to do is 7 unique counseling cases over that period of time. But then after a lot of evaluation and talking to students, most people want more than an initial session. And so they're not really getting the experience of sitting with somebody over a length of time to see how that develops and grows. But I am getting some requests that I may be referring to all of you, which is why I brought it up. So if you would like to take the case, then you can, and if you would not, you can refuse. Um, but and they're aware that you are in practicum, and they're going by my recommendation, and I trust each and every one of you that you would be great to sit with someone. So, Nick, did you have another question?
Yeah. So our friend Paul Spears hit me up probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago and said, "Hey, man, I got a guy that I know you're in your practicum. I got a guy, for you and all that. But like, does it have to be like the formality of sitting down with them and talking with them for an hour, 7 different times to be applicable?"
Yeah.
Because me and Paul and our friend, we're I'm taking phone calls and texting back and forth, and we've met up a couple times. We went to church a couple times, so it's kind of like, kind of maintaining that relationship. And he's going through some things that I'm kind of, that I've been through, and but it's not like because of his work schedule, my work schedule, and all that kind of stuff. It's difficult to say, all right, well, let's meet 7 times, like formally and all that kind of stuff. So is there some flexibility there?
No.
No.
No. Not in a casual conversation or relationship, because it is very much the counseling relationship, and not that
Okay.
it necessarily has to be formal in terms of like in an office, but in a Zoom context or meeting
Hmm.
with somebody, so that you are intentionally meeting. And when you tell people about it, you can say, this is part of my practicum work, and I do have to schedule, if that's helpful. I do have to
Hmm.
schedule 7, you can say hours, 7 individual hours if you want to, but that, I would leave yourself more time in case that conversation required more time. So not trying to fit it in among many other things. And the
Yeah.
relationship is important. Don't get me wrong. All the things, taking him to church and texting and all those things, but a counseling relationship is what we want you to learn and experience. Is that actual 7 sitting down, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like on Zoom, whatever it might be, and getting to know the person and having those deep conversations, because it takes a while to get to a deep conversation. And you're not
Okay.
going to get to a deep conversation in a text or,
Yeah. No. So
yeah.
he had asked me like, "Hey, is does this count or anything like that?" And I said, "Well, look, hold on, let me think about it, and I'll get back
Yeah.
to you." So like, I could I
Well,
could
get back
I
to
could
him
let
and
it.
say, I talked to my professor
Yeah.
and she really would like me to do 7 meetings with someone. And
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be you if you don't want to commit to that, but you have plenty of time between then and now to schedule
Yep.
out those hours.
Yep.
Um, and you can be flexible in that. If it doesn't work one week, you can change the time, but just that he's committing to that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I will
I'll I'll talk to him about it. I appreciate it,
and
but
I
yeah,
will be giving each of you an intake form to use as well with the person that you end up sitting with, so that you get the experience of, and it gives some preliminary information so you kind of know how you want to proceed. But I took a good look here at who needs people, so I've got you in mind. And if you raise your hand again, I'm going to have Lena. Lena, would you just look at who's raising their hand and make a list for us so that I can work that out?
I was checking in with my church and the women's director,
Yes.
and she said that she was going to check in with the young adult ministry because they might have someone. So I'm just waiting to hear back from her.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
but she seemed concerned a little bit that it was like more of a formal counseling
Yeah.
setting. So I'm not sure how she's going to respond to it. Does it have to be someone we
Yeah.
don't know?
Well, I wouldn't recommend counseling someone you know really well because that can be uncomfortable. Um, and it may not be the best learning experience for you either. Because kind of that dual role comes into play there. But if they would like to talk to me, and you can, if they have, I mean, counseling triggers everybody when you say the word sometimes in the church. So if you want to use the word, this is just like a discipleship. We're just going to be meeting. If they have a struggle or they just want someone to talk to, it's not that official, it's confidential. I'm just learning how to sit with people and apply what I've learned and just kind of take the edge off there if they think it's got to be this professional thing. We have had this very problem, which is why we went to one, because people in the church will not approve our practicum students, and I don't get that. I don't understand why they're so worried about us sitting down with people to offer care. So I recognize the challenge, but we'll keep you on the list, Julie, just in case that doesn't work out. Okay? Yeah, because I'm going to be working on that. Um, and putting the word out in my circles that I have people available, and I do think we'll be able to help you meet that need. Yeah. And I think you'll be really grateful for the experience because that's what this is really all about. All righty. Good stuff. Okay, so you're going to be reading Therapeutic Expedition this week in chapters 9 and 10. And chapter 9 is managing the counseling session, which is a very important chapter. And chapter 10 is conducting an assessment. So these chapters are very important to prepare you, if you've never sat with people, to prepare you for those sessions, to give you some idea of what's involved in an actual session and assessment. Your counseling journal is pretty much your assessing tool, as we have assessment on there, in addition to a wide variety of other things that we're asking you to look for. So you are good in that area, but be sure that you're really interacting with these because all the practical piece of this book is coming to light in these final chapters, and they're very, very important. Um, there was one thing I wanted to draw your attention to, and it is I think I posted it on the board. Did I post it on the board, Lena? The Hawkins concentric circles. I'll bet you I forgot to post it on the board. Okay. I'm going to share screen then and bring it up so that we can look at it. Hold on a minute. And then I will make sure that each of you have a copy of it. I might even be able to download it in the chat. Let's see. Share. And okay, I'm going to have to go pull it up first. And AC 651. There we go. Okay, so I'll pull that up first. Okay, now that it's up, I can go back and share. Okay, here we go. Okay, thumbs up if you can see this. Okay. Now this should look familiar to you. from the influences of the heart circles that I showed you at the very beginning of class. And this comes to you by way of therapeutic expedition. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is because it's important. What they are trying to do with this shows that influence flows inward and outward, and the core of the person affects all other areas, and all other areas impact the core. And really, what they're trying to communicate, just like Pauluson's chart, is they are trying to communicate whole person dynamic in counseling. So that the idea too that all of these areas are connected and that they all have to be considered because they are all impacted. Now, they never make the connection with the heart, which I think is unfortunate, but this is very similar. So just going over this real quick, the core, the innermost circle there, this contains the image of God, and that is so important. Image bearing. We are image bearers. The people we see are image bearers, and our posture towards them should be that of honoring, respecting, and valuing the image bearer. Sin nature is going to impact every single person and ourselves, right? We all have a sin nature, and it is always an ongoing sanctifying struggle that we go through. And we have the Holy Spirit for the believer. This is not be for the unbeliever, but for the believer. So the authors argue that you'll be reading this week that this spiritual core, number one, the innermost circle, influences all the other dimensions of life. So the regenerate and ungenerate person are understood differently because the believer is indwelt by the Spirit and engaged in sanctification. The unbeliever, what would happen is you would still treat them as an image bearer. You would be aware that they have a sin nature, but you would be attempting to build bridges in conversation. So it's going to look different than a counseling session with a believer. It very much employs a kind of pre-evangelistic approach in getting to know the person, to know their story, and to be able to whet their appetite, hopefully, for a life of faith and Jesus. The second circle is the soul, and this you will be familiar. They have thoughts, emotions, and volition, the will. Now we have the counseling triad, which is thoughts, attitudes, and actions are very much what we will to do. So there's not too much different there. And they will tell you that many counseling problems manifest here: distorted thinking, disordered emotions, and poor choices often emerge at this level. And the authors note that many counseling interventions focus on this circle, number two. Number three is the body. Remember, our first circle on Pauluson's chart was physically embodied. And so we have to consider in the physical dimension, the physical functioning, genetics, illness, physiology, neurology, and physical functioning. And their main point, and we've already talked about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time there. Their main point is that the physical and emotional functioning are interconnected. They are not compartmentalized. They flow from one to another. For example, anxiety may have bodily consequences, while physical illness may affect emotional functioning. And then we look at the temporal systems, and you might say that is our socially embedded, as Pauluson would say, circle. This, which includes families, friends, church, culture, social relationships, cultural influences. The authors emphasize that in this way, people learn patterns of thinking, relating, and behaving within these systems, within these dynamics. And then 5 is supernatural systems. Remember, we had as our outside circle the God of providence, and this includes God, Satan, angels, and demonic influences. And the point is not that every problem is demonic, but that Christian counseling recognizes spiritual realities beyond the visible world. And we do. There is an invisible war going on, and we do have to be aware of that. So the book uses the circles during the psychosocial history and assessment process. So here's their questions. When a counselee presents a problem, the counselor asks, what is happening in the person's relationship with God? That is the core. That is the core. What is happening in the person's relationship with God? With the soul, what beliefs, emotions, and desires are operating within the soul? Are there physical contributors? That's a question for the body. What family and social influences are involved? That's a question for temporal systems. And then supernatural systems, for example, are there spiritual warfare issues? So this model was designed to help the counselor avoid simplistic explanations and develop a more complete case conceptualization. Does that make sense? I think it's good for us. These circles and concentric circles are part of many worthwhile diagrams. And it's very helpful for you to just print one out with every counselee and then begin to fill in. Maybe move the items out to the right or to the left, and then be able to jot a few notes in each circle that are relevant to the case. So just another tool, but something that I wanted to highlight from your reading this week, because it is very important that we are really looking at these things holistically as we go through them. All right, so with that, we're going to go to our case study number 4. Laura, let me stop the share here. There we go. Case number 4, Laura. And I wanted to make a note of something. It would help you a lot if you do your discussion board on Mondays. Your discussion board is always going to relate to the present case. And this week's discussion board, some of you have already posted, is on addictions. So it's going to give you some familiarity with the case study for the week. It's going to give you something to cite, something to consider as you go through your counseling journal. So it will be very helpful if you look at that earlier in the week than later in the week, so that you can begin to study your case and get ready for your journal on Thursday. So we are going to look at an initial assessment for Laura. And who wants to go first on that this week? Lorena. Okay, Lorena. Take us through the initial assessment.
I think I'm getting better. I'm getting I was putting just words I kind of understood, but now I'm kind of making more sense, making it
Yeah,
more.
it takes a while to get used to it.
I feel like I'm getting things are coming together. But
Good.
for
I'm so
Laura's
glad to hear that.
for Laura's physical state appears to be moderately affected by her increasing alcohol consumption. Has shared that she is experiencing fatigue and low energy, difficulty sleeping, falling asleep quickly after drinking, but waking up during the night, feeling tired in the morning, irritability, low motivation, and believes it's related to her increase of alcohol consumption. She has not seen a doctor, nor is she taking medication. Hodges says that habitual drunkenness will lead to multiple problems, some of which can be catastrophic, such as liver failure, heart disease, hypertension, cancer, seizures, and cognitive decline. Often results in physical consequences, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, cognitive impairment, liver disease, cardiovascular problems, and physical dependence. And for the background family, she grew up in a non-Christian home where alcohol use was a normal part of daily life. Her childhood was generally stable, afflicted in the home, often avoided rather than addressed. Growing up in such an environment may have contributed to her habits of suppressing concerns and avoiding discussion about her situation. Laura became a Christian in her early 20s and has been consistently involved in church for several years. She describes herself as someone who prefers to keep things together and not burden others with her problems. This pattern may contribute to her reluctance to seek help and her tendency to manage stress independently.
Okay, did you do the spiritual?
The spiritual. She became a Christian in her early 20s. In the last several years, she has attended church constantly. She doesn't seem to put, her faith is weak. But she does honor God.
Right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well done. And you used Hodges. Good for you. You did an excellent job. You gave us a perfect assessment. Well done. I'm so proud of you. So proud of you.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Counseling triad. Who's going up for the counseling triad?
I'll go.
Okay, Selena, you're up.
So identifying problem thoughts. I seen when she said it helps me relax. I just need something to take the edge off, and I can stop whenever I want. And I don't want people to think I have a problem. I just need to manage it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so then her problem emotions were
Can you
that.
hear me? Is it the microphone? It's her microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You want to just talk a little louder so we can hear you, but you're doing great. You're doing great. That was better. Your
Okay.
laugh was better.
Okay, so identify the problem emotions would be her guilt after drinking, her irritability. She gets anxious and full of stress, and especially when she's trying to take that edge off.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a fear of being seen, that people see her, with that alcohol problem. So, but
Mm-hmm.
then it causes her low motivation and her emotional fatigue.
Good.
And then the identify the problem actions would be she increasingly drinks more alcohol, and the frequency, it just keeps growing. So
Yes.
now she has a difficult time stopping,
Mm-hmm.
and now she's hiding the amount that she's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows that her alcohol is her primary coping strategy. And then she
Good.
becomes very defensive when her husband confronts her.
Excellent. Wow. Do you see how much information you already have as a counselor on Laura? That's a lot of background. Well done. Very good. Counseling worldview analysis. Who's up for that? Don't be shy. Heather? Okay, Heather.
Yeah, I can give it a try.
Yes.
So, what does the counselee believe or assume about God? In the case study, it doesn't say very much about that, but that certainly has some implications.
Yes.
So when Laura is having struggles, she's not turning to God. And so that reflects the fact that she doesn't see him as relevant in her struggle.
Mhm.
Um, so
Very good.
he isn't so that the implication of that is that he is either not able or not willing to help her. And
Mm,
so she is taking it upon herself to solve her problems.
good job.
So those are the implications of her behavior with regards to how she views God.
Yes.
From an ontological perspective, Laura is concerned about what people think. Um, with knowing who she is as a child of God, she would be much more secure in her identity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
What is her identity rooted in now?
um, so she's one that wants to have it all together. So it's
Exactly.
rooted in having it all together, and that's a reflection of the conflict avoidant home that
Mm-hmm.
she was in. That
Yeah,
she has to have it all together.
exactly. And that's a very independent, right? Very independent view. I have to do it. I'm capable. Me, right? I got it all together. I'm going to keep things together.
Yeah.
Have we all been proved wrong of that in our life when things spin out of control and I can't? Heather held up two hands. I should have held up two hands as well. We think we can. It's like the little train that could. I think I can. I think I can. Oh, no, I can't. That was good. Okay. You're doing great, Heather. Continue on.
Keep going. Okay. So for the
Yeah.
epistemological, um, so Laura is not, we don't see evidence of her turning to the word to help her
Mhm.
in her struggles. And so the word is not her authority. She is turning to alcohol to help her manage her stress. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that she probably learned in her family. If they're conflict avoidant and alcohol is commonly used, that very easily could be a behavior pattern she learned there.
Mhm.
Um, having things run smoothly, and the way things are keeping things running smoothly is and having things running smoothly is one of the ways she knows what's right.
Exactly. Exactly. Very good.
And then from an ethical perspective, um, she's making decisions based upon how she's feeling, and again, what is going to enable her to achieve keeping everything running smoothly.
Mhm.
Um, and from a decision-making perspective, her drinking, so she's making choices to drink. She's tired during the day, which would have a negative impact on her work. She's defensive with her husband when he's trying to talk to her about her drinking. Um, and yeah, all of those things, all of those behaviors, the choosing to drink, and then the problems with sleep, they all just kind of snowball.
Yeah. So you see when your metaphysics and your epistemology are off, that it's affecting her choices and decisions, right? What she ought to do.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about her own feelings, subjective feelings are an epistemology because their voice is speaking louder than truth, right? Her subjective feelings about her situation and herself. So good, very
Mm-hmm.
good job. That was wonderful. And so when we're looking at the ethical piece, what is this person choosing to do in this situation? And good job. Okay, finish us out with
Okay.
sociopraxy.
So, from a sociopraxy perspective, it all kind of flows together because she is so has to have it together herself. She's very limited in close friends, and more importantly, she has no accountability. So she's very private. It's also not obvious that she's serving others. Um, she potentially is avoiding intimacy and exposure again because she's afraid of what people are going to think. But that's exactly what she needs and is exactly what's going to help her.
Wow. Well, that was fabulous. Excellent. So robust. Great worldview. Great worldview. You see how worldview takes it to another level? Those worldview questions just ask you to be more attentive to the deeper root issues. That's what the worldview framework does. And you gave us so much insight there. So thank you so much. That was excellent. Okay, who wants to do part 4? Addressing counselee's needs. Nick. Okay, Nick.
Okay, so for security, I put Laura's security lies within herself. Her beliefs could be manifesting from her youth, where she grew up in a non-Christian home and where conflict was not addressed. When her identity becomes exposed or challenged, she can appear to get defensive or either recoil or retaliate.
Good.
And
Continue
then,
on.
I'm sorry?
Continue on. You're doing
Okay,
great.
and significance is Laura's significance resides within her identity, that she's independent and strong. The appearance that she got it all together is what seems to be significance she holds closely.
Yes, very good. And as you said, in the insecurity thing, when people aren't, trusting in God for their security, they're going to trust in something for that security. And so right now for her, it is her trusting in herself, but also in the alcohol to solve her problems, right? The things that she wants to avoid dealing with in her life. So well done, Nick. Gosh, you guys are just doing excellent. Okay, counselor competency. Who wants to take that one? Skills and scripture.
I can do this one.
Okay, Jaden. And then Matt, we'll have you do the next one. We'll have you do the counseling plan. Okay, Jaden.
Okay, for skills, I said one skill I would use during the session is asking open-ended questions, specifically ones that allow her space to self-reflect and see the correlation of a biblical view of God and herself. And then I would say light and gentle confrontation could be appropriate, but depending on her state, I would want to actively listen well to Laura and discern if she's at this place where I can share with her where her struggle is taking over her life and spiritual life. And then for scripture, I said the verse I'd focus on in the first session is Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understandings. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he'll make your path straight. I said I feel as though Laura needs to go back to the basics with God, remembering that he is a God who can be trusted, and that and that we can acknowledge and believe that he's in control and faithful to us. We do not need to lean on our own understandings, but when we place our trust in him, he'll make our path straight. Just because Laura seems to depend a lot on alcohol. And so even though there's obviously a root of like avoidance and all of those things, I do feel like she needs to go back to kind of like where she started with the Lord when she came to her faith.
Yeah. Take her back to the beginning. That's good. Very, very well done. I really appreciate that. I like how you said gentle confrontation, because there will be a point where you're sitting with Laura where you have to address the alcohol, right? You have to confront her on that. Well, look, this has now gone into an addictive problem versus just a drink here and there, and how that progression has led her to where she is. So I like how you put those two words together, gentle and confrontation. And at some point, I mean, we need to be gracious and the timing needs to be led by the Spirit, but we do have to address the elephant in the room, which is the addiction, right? We want to understand her. We've gotten through all of this whole assessment so far. So when we come to this place for skills, that will be a necessary one, is gentle conversation. Yeah, good. Very, very good. All right. So Matt, you're up next.
All right. I was trying to volunteer sooner because I feel least confident about this section, but
That's
that's
okay.
all
You'll
right.
be fine.
Okay, so as far as hard work, I would assign to the counselee. I really agree with Jaden that for me, actually, I put confrontation initially for the previous section, and I was like, actually, I'm not sure if I would start there, but I think it might eventually come to that. One thing I was thinking is that you could essentially build confrontation naturally and without it being between you and the counselee is by assigning her a task for the week to just record how much alcohol she drinks and also when. So like for me that would naturally, again, right now she's the way she thinks about it is she does not think that her alcohol is the issue. The issue in her mind is that other people are thinking that she has an issue, and she wants to resolve that. She essentially wants it managed so that other people aren't being critical of her. And so
Yeah.
I feel like that would just bring her potentially to a level of awareness. If she can tell me this is how many glasses I had, Monday through Sunday, and this is the times when I drank. I don't know a ton about alcoholism, but I do know that like the time period, well, obviously amounts, but then even like the times of the day when you're drinking can be significant indicators of a dependency. I'll also one of the tasks I would sign her like in this, I would probably view it maybe as like a worksheet. Like, hey, here's your
Yeah.
worksheet. So as throughout the week, tell me when you drank, how much you drank, and then also if there were any things that whenever you feel the inclination to drink, just like note down, like, okay, uh, work was hard. I want you to write down like I feel like I want to have a drink right now. And then the other thing I wrote down for hard work for her is I would ask her to choose someone in her life, um, and to talk to the issue with them. So that's what I wrote down. I don't know actually if that's a good thought because I want her to confess or bring the community into her issue, but she doesn't view it as a problem yet. So I feel like that's kind of a futile effort. Like it's a futile exercise because in her mind, there's nothing to confess. She's working on it, and it's not even
And
that big of an issue
yeah,
anyway.
who should be the
Um,
first person that she tells because she has a secret? Who's the first person she needs to
I
tell?
mean, she's talked to God about it, but
Huh? Well,
that's
yeah, but I mean after that.
but she's like she needs to talk to her. Well, her husband and her are already talking, but she hasn't actually confessed anything to her husband because she doesn't believe
Exactly.
that she has an issue with alcohol. She has an issue with her husband in her mind, like or others. So,
And that would be step one, is to tell her that you were right about that prompting, that you had to share it with someone and confess it is absolutely right. And for her, she's already hiding it from the community, which is going to be harder. But as she steps to the closest person first and tells her husband, and Matt, your suggestion of a journal, and even going through the inclination piece is what you might think of as a trigger, is what is triggering the moments when she goes to take a drink is very insightful. I don't know why you weren't so sure about that, because that was an excellent, excellent. And when we give counselees tools like that, it's so helpful for them. It's something practical to do. It gives them an activity, and then they can come back and they can share that journal with you, and you just sit there and listen, and then they can be aware of, because she's not stopping to think about the problems that are causing her to reach for that drink. And that is often the situation with addictions.
mm,
They begin by trying to find a way to cope, a way to manage, and they can start very small, and then they become habitual, right? It becomes something that I reach for. I need to reach for it more and more because I'm only getting temporary relief. And temporary relief is now it's going to look like, well, I need temporary relief again and again and again, right? It's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to create more of an addiction. Well done, Matt. That was excellent in so many ways. Really.
Thanks. I think Nick has a question too.
Yes, Nick.
Yeah, I just curious, just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this, but I imagine would would we use the term addiction like on the first kind of the first go around with sitting with the person based on Laura's intake form? Would it be assumed that there's an addiction at that point?
Well, not if she's not disclosed that on the intake, but in the conversation, if Laura is the one that she seems to point out on the intake that I think I'm drinking a little more than I should. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to pull out the addiction word. You can let Laura arrive at that
Okay.
because she's halfway there in what she mentioned on the intake form already, right? She's
Yeah.
aware that this is becoming a bit of a problem. And
Yeah.
so you don't have to definitely call it that, but you can let Laura come to the conclusion
There you go.
of this is the problem I have. And you can agree with her that she has
Yeah.
that problem. Good question. Good
And
question.
the reason why I asked that, because I do have experience in AA, and one of the
Yeah.
things that we learn in AA is like nobody can call you an alcoholic but yourself. So when you guys were kind of going back and forth about like who does she need to confess that to, in my mind I was thinking herself, right? But then you guys were like her husband, and I was like, uh-oh, that through
Well,
like
there's part of Laura that knows, or she wouldn't be there in the counseling room. So
yeah.
she's coming for help, which is good.
Okay.
And yeah, so good. Those are all really, really good questions, and definitely pertain to an addiction issue. And the other thing is, and even what Matt was saying with that journal, why it's so good, because a journal is going to reveal patterns in a life of when these things occur, how often they occur. I even love that Matt pointed out how much is she drinking in that at that time. All of those things are important to assess where Laura's at and how much of a struggle this really is for her, and then what the direction is going to be moving forward for um, a plan to get that under control, right? So good job, everybody. All right, so Mark, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to do the prayer section for us?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry, my voice is hoarse right now.
That's okay.
So
Sounds very
for
deep.
I ate something earlier, and while I was at work, it all came up, and so I
Oh
just had to come
no,
home.
Mark, I'm so
So,
sorry.
so
You're
for the
not feeling
prayer, I
well.
wrote, um, it says, Lord, thank you for Laura and for her courage and asking for help. Please meet her with truth and grace. Help her not to hide or carry this burden alone. Show her where alcohol has become a false comfort that cannot truly satisfy. Give her honesty, hope, and safe support. Amen.
Okay, and we're not with her.
Lord, please protect Laura from the shame and secrecy. Help her see that confession is not the end of her story. It can be part of her healing. Give me wisdom to counsel her with patience, care, and truth. Amen.
Very good. Very good. And just be careful in the prayer with them. You know that it was beautiful, Mark. And I think just that last sentence, be careful when that's prayed in terms of if she's admitted, if you've
Okay.
gotten that far in the counseling. So it's not coming to her as a fresh observation. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes.
Like she's like, oh, that's me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but oh, beautiful. Just so touching and so warm and so spirit led. Thank you so much. All
Dr.
right.
Margie,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to
No,
add something. When I was just at a group with the VA, and there's I mean everybody's I mean it's a whole group of like different kinds of addictions. And one thing that I brought up was well, like for me personally, when it comes to alcohol, like I get it. You don't want to feel the pain. You don't want to be in that moment. Like you just don't want to feel. So there's all you just need the quick fix. And for me, I turned to the alcohol and I turned to pills and whatnot. And what I remind like I'm listening to these people and I'm thinking, I kind of programmed myself to think that I needed these vices, that I needed, just that quick fix. And what I never did was give myself permission to feel that way,
yeah,
because it's okay to feel the anger. It's okay to feel depressed. It's the choices that you make afterwards. It's all normal to feel like that. So give
mhm,
yourself grace and give yourself permission to feel. You don't have to
yes,
turn to the alcohol. Just go ahead
exactly.
and feel it and absorb it. And then, I'm real, like, I think one of the other gentlemen just mentioned journaling and writing everything down and just see if you can catch a pattern. And then see, if it's a certain part of the day, if there's a certain trigger that you can, like, I'm real big on bringing up journaling. But one thing I said was, just go ahead and give yourself permission to feel. You don't have to
Yeah,
turn to those vices.
yeah. Or you don't have to numb those feelings. And I'm
Yes.
really glad that you brought that up because we don't ever want to dismiss someone's emotions and giving
Yeah.
them, that's why they come to us so that we can give them a space to be honest and to be real and even sometimes the first time to confront themselves, right? Because they may not even know. That's why I liked Matt's idea of a journal and the trigger points because they may not even know what they're trying to escape. They
Yeah.
might not have even thought about it. It started, it's become a pattern, and they don't know why. And there might be something there in that journal that reveals a lot to both you, the counselor, and them, the counselee, which
Yeah.
would be very powerful and very helpful. So, thank you for that. And I do think that giving yourself permission, because the emotions are real and the only thing we want to know about emotions is we just don't want emotions to be number one on our epistemology or what we know to be true because our emotions often lie to us. And so we want them to serve us well as God designed our emotions to do and to serve us in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way. So well done. Thank you, Mark. I'm sorry you're not feeling well. That's horrible.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Julie. Well, why don't you start us off with your counselor self-awareness? How did you feel about this?
I felt I gave myself a 5. Um, just because I felt like I'm not sure what I do next,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
haven't read chapter 10 yet, so maybe it's in chapter 10. Um, for my strengths, I said I feel empathy for Laura and can relate in the desire to want to be self sufficient. I understand her desire to meet her own needs using whatever is available, and feeling burnt out and exhausted and always coming up empty handed trying to do it herself. I can relate
hmm
with that. I feel like another strength is just that I can listen and sort of lean into what she's sharing. And I feel like I might be able to speak feedback a little bit more boldly on this topic, because I've been rehearsing some of these truths to myself, and
hmm
throughout my walk with the Lord. But the weakness I feel is that I might want to jump to answers too quickly and not allow her the space that she might need to, like you guys were just saying, get to that place of understanding what she's going through and where
yeah,
she is actually at. And like just allowing her time and space to get there and not rushing her there.
exactly. And that's a beautiful plan. I mean, not rushing her there is believe it or not, it is a step. It's like, I'm not going to rush her there. I'm going to listen and I'm going to see I'm going to listen for a starting point specifically, right? Because you may not know where you're going to start. And that is where we talk about triage. And, when you go to the emergency room, for example, and there's 100 people in the waiting room and you put your name on the list and you're all surprised and excited because they've called you back in 5 minutes and you thought you had a 4.5 hour wait. And so you go in and the nurse interviews you and maybe takes your temperature and asks you what the problem is. And what she's doing is she's triaging you amongst the 100 of people that are out in the waiting room to see how urgent is your case compared to everybody else's there. So then you're very disappointed when you are sent back to the waiting room and you really are there for 3.5 hours because there were cases that were so much more important than yours. So we do the same thing in a counselee's life is for their circumstances, what is the most important thing that we need to attend to first? This is particularly important in crisis counseling, but where does you guys mentioned several wonderful things about insights about Laura's life. And one of those is her drinking patterns. One of those is you talked about her security and significance. And so we know she has some identity issues, right? She's making poor decisions. She's isolating. Um, And so you've got these things that are what we call in counseling presenting concerns that you are triaging. And she has not told her husband. And I would say the best thing is when somebody's carrying a secret and they share that with you, and they have somebody who's in very close proximity, like a spouse, uh, that it is good to work towards helping that person let go of that secret and share it. And they're going to experience relief right at that moment when they do, because hiding something is very uh, stress building, right? And you're trying to hide it from the people that you hang with. You're trying to hide it from your family members. So just to relieve her, so she's in a good space, right? Where she can then begin to feel some relief of that burden and then begin to address um, the alcohol. And I do think since she's concerned about the alcohol in her intake form, that's kind of where she wants to start. Matt's idea of the journal would be a good first step after Julie, all the things that you said, which is hearing her story, having empathy for her, leaning into that situation. And, sometimes we think, wrongly think that we have to know a lot about all of these things like addiction but remember your presence with her is important. You're going to learn a lot about Laura just from her patterns and the thing about addiction is when you're really dealing with some people who are suffering physically from that addiction. The physical piece has to be taken care of first. And whether that means that they have to, sometimes that's a drug rehab for their next move. Because don't ever try to counsel somebody when they're under the influence of anything. You just need, if you're aware they're under the influence of anything, you need to say, oh, could I ask you, have you been drinking? Like maybe there's alcohol in their breath. Okay, well, let's wait for a moment, when you're sober to come in because they won't be able to remember anything. It will be a complete waste of time to try to have a conversation if somebody is high in and at the time. So, but then if somebody has just come out of a drug rehab, they're in a very vulnerable and fragile state. So you just want to remind them more about God's love and you're someone who's there for them and not putting a lot of pressure on them because they're just in this very fragile state. I don't know if in the resources, Lena, could you look for me to see if I posted, I want to give you a resource in case you ever have an issue. Dr. George Crabb was a student of mine, and he is a drug addiction specialist doctor. And he's up in Northern California. He teaches at West Coast Baptist in their undergrad counseling department. I have a video of him. Is it there in the resource? I'm going to go back and post it if I don't have it. I will post his video and outline because I have him have had him in class as a guest speaker in the practicum, and so he was having a little challenges with his health recently. So, but he brings Jesus into every conversation, and he is the most humble and loving man. But he's also very firm. He's written some books. So if you put his name in the Google search, Dr. George Crabb, he's written on codependency and addiction, and he has some good resources. So yeah, just to pass along that resource, and I will find that video and I'll make sure we post it. I'll post it in this lesson. There also was an outline that came with it. But when he shared with our class, he emphasized to us, particularly when someone comes out of rehab, the brain and the physical manifestations that are still the residue that's kind of left physically puts them in a very vulnerable spot where you don't want to begin, saying implement this or implement that. It's more a state of until they get more sure on their feet of encouragement and just meeting to have another person present and to just love on that person in that very vulnerable time. I forget he talks about how many weeks it is, but he's so knowledgeable, and that is his practice and that is his specialty, and he gets to share Christ with a lot of people in his office, which is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. So anybody else, how did you rate, Heather? Where did you fall on the
So I would say kind of 7, 8.
Good. Okay, good. I could tell by your worldview framework you were pretty sure of yourself. That was good. And it's okay when you get there, you guys, it's okay to give yourself a high score. Because if you really, as we discuss it in class, this is for your affirmation as much as anything else. So that we can affirm you and we can say, yes, that's right. And if most of what you wrote in your journal is in agreement with what we're sharing in class, then you are growing and you're getting it. And so be fair to yourself, be kind to yourself. But then again, also be humble and recognize that if you don't think this was your best, that's okay too. But we like to ask because it helps us gauge where you are going. And so that is important to us. Okay, Matt, what about for you?
I gave myself a 5 out of 10. I think I did ministry in a halfway house, so I've done the AA meetings and I've met with I met with guys, but I never met with any of the guys going through the program on like an official counseling basis. Like I was doing a ministry program where we would teach and meet with them, but I just felt like going through this, I need to do more. I need to educate myself more on specifically, that's what I mentioned in my paper, but I want to know more about like signs of alcohol dependency beyond just total amount consumed or something. So I just felt like I've got a reference point, but I've never looked into this I've never looked into alcohol dependency in a professional manner before.
Yeah, and and that's good. And you can familiarize yourself because not every addiction starts out as a coping thing. I mean, today we have a lot of people who are addicted to painkillers because of an injury, for example, right?
Yeah.
But it's when and you said, I don't want it to just be that, content related or when they, but that really is a key identifying factor is when they're reaching something of abnormal use
Yeah.
or pattern develops, right? That wasn't there before. And it happens quite innocently in people's lives who have suffered injuries and have been given pain medication. And so we have to be very responsible and very, as Julie said, empathetic to the struggle, no matter what the source of the struggle, so that we are inviting them in to be real and to be honest about the struggle. I can tell you a funny story. I got kicked out of an AA meeting because I went with a friend who invited me to come, and she was getting some kind of a chip, the chip for how long she had been there. And I think it was like a 5-year chip. And so when I went in and everybody said that they were an alcoholic, and then it got to me, I I said, this was a long time ago. I would probably be wiser today. So give me some grace, okay? But I could not understand why they had to say they were an alcoholic when she was 5 years from drinking. And then it got to me, and then they wanted me to say it. I was like, I'm not an alcoholic, and neither is she. And they said, well, you're going to leave the room. You have to leave the room. And so I got to see her get the coin, but then I got kicked out. And I waited out in the waiting room for her, and I said, I am so sorry that just came out. And I shouldn't have said that, but I was not going to say that you're an alcoholic. I certainly wasn't going to say that I'm an alcoholic, though I had problems with alcohol before I came to the Lord, which is why I made a big decision not to drink when I became, that's just me, when I became a believer, because I chose alcohol for all the wrong reasons, like Laura. But I was very intentional. I wasn't surprised that I was drinking a lot. I was intentionally drinking a lot. So, but yeah, that I know that AA helps a lot of people, but I think one of the problems is when we have victory, we claim victory. And we thank God for that victory, and we walk from there. Now we may have a problem and we might slip back, but that's not our identity anyway. We are not, our problems, or we are not our struggle. So these things refine us. They do not define us. And there's a very big difference in the way we see ourselves and in that difference. Okay. Who didn't I call? Somebody tell me what you gave yourself. Yes, Lorena.
I gave myself a 6 this time. I felt better. And after reading chapter 9, it did put a lot of things. It's coming along. Like I'm
It's
able
coming
to,
along.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Good.
So yeah.
Good. And we're going to be talking even about more of those things as we go forward. Um, that's really, really good. Oh, Nick. Okay, that's good, Nick. Everybody check out Nick's chat to everyone. He's got some and you could talk to Nick because Nick has had victory in that area, and I'm sure, would love to share some things with you to help you get a up close and personal look, and that's going to serve him well as a counselor. Um, because remember, 2 Corinthians, right? 1:3-5 is God comforts us. We receive the comfort of God so that we may comfort others, so that they themselves may be comforted as we've been comforted by God. That's that parakaleo word used about 11 times in that passage of scripture. So God had a design in mind. It wouldn't be enough for us to sit and suffer alone. Our comfort would become a ministry to other people. Our comfort we receive from God for our deepest struggles would become a comfort and a ministry to others. And I think so much of what we want for others comes out of how God has changed our lives, right? We just want to share that with everybody else. So that was great. Now, in terms of some of these topics, let me just tell you some things that, some resources for you, some ways to, when you say at the end of a counseling journal, I would like to study this more, I would like to study that more, start to build your library in a number of ways. You have your books here from seminary. You have sources that we will often refer to in class, and begin to do some reading. I think I gave you Christian Counseling Education Foundation, which is where I'm getting the journal articles. You can become a member for a very relatively low fee, and have access to that library, and they have a lot of counseling journals. I found though that they don't have too many recent ones up there, which I think they should be adding too, but you could actually even write an article and submit it to CCEF for their library. That's one way. The American Association of Christian Counselors, which we're going to talk about their code of ethics towards the end of this course. Another great way to have is a yearly membership. And if you get the, I don't know if it's called presidential premier membership, you will get their counseling magazine 4 times a year, which has been very helpful to me. I will bring you samples of that the next time we get together. But those magazines, AACC, they are a little bit different, and they're not so much, they are more informed clinically than they are from a biblical counseling perspective, but they do have a lot of free resources, and the magazine is worth the prescription, because you can, the subscription, because you can go back to those magazines time and time again. If you find a helpful article, but that is just, you just become a student of the topic, and you don't have to do that for every topic, but maybe it's something that you just feel called to, that you want to learn more about. So become a student of that thing. That's what I did over all the years I've been collecting, and I have quite a library now. So if also you need some things, send me an email and I'll see what I have on it. And I can send it along to you to help you. So now, with that said, before we break, we will not be gathering together next week because I will be at the IBCD conference. But I will be posting for your benefit, probably a short video of some type for you to report back on, with a, just so I know that you watched it. Tell me what you thought about it. I'm not sure what that is yet. I'm going to be looking for that material. But you will not have to meet physically. We will not be meeting. We will be setting up our booth at in Riverside, because we are, SES is exhibiting, and I'm teaching a workshop on emotions there as well. So keep us in prayer as we represent our school, and as we gather. I encourage you in your area. This is another way to grow. Go to a biblical counseling conference. It's a whole new world. Expose yourself. Get to know people. There's so much out there now. This is a great time to be alive in the biblical counseling world. We are making such headway as a movement, and we are becoming legitimized, for lack of a better word, and well known, and more people are seeking to help, whether it's a lay person that we do in our call to care ministry, or it is a licensed counselor in our behavioral science side. God has called you to this. And so when we step into our calling, we equip ourselves. God has given us all that we need, right, for life and godliness, but he wants to grow us in these areas where we're serving. So we want to be sure to do that as well. Are there any other questions? Aren't you glad there's not a final project at the end of this course? And you're going to get a break between mod 5 and 6, right? Okay. Okay, so who wants to close us in prayer right now? Anyone at home want to close us in prayer? Julie. Okay, Julie. Thank you.
Dear God, thank you so much for Dr. Hill and for um, Lena and my classmates. Thank you for all that we're learning. I pray, Lord, that you would help us to absorb what we're learning and that you would bring it to remembrance as we need it throughout our counseling ministry, now and in the future. I pray, Lord, that you would bless and protect everyone and whatever they're going through individually that we may not know about. I pray that you would be with them and comfort them, Lord, and help us to be a comfort to others. Thank you so much. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Julie, was it your birthday or something?
It was my mom's birthday
Nice.
last Thursday, so I still have it up.
Okay. I was
Happy
about to say
birthday,
we have to
Mom.
sing happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Thanks.
Belated birthday.
We threw her a surprise party, so I had I don't know, I hosted 17 people last weekend. So that's why I missed class because it was Thursday.
Nice.
That's right.
I
All
know.
right, guys. Have a
we
great
missed
week.
you, Julie. Welcome back. All right, you guys, have a great week.
y'all.
I am so proud of you. Aren't we, Lena? You guys are growing in leaps and bounds. It's exciting to watch it happen. So proud of all of you. Good job. Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye.